Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm back for episode 62 of the podcast. This is the second half of a double episode with Jason Perez of Shelf Stories. How you doing, Jason?
Yo, my peoples, what's up? This is our second try at this. The first try was really good. This one's going to be even better.
Yeah, it's always good to have a second draft. And two, like, honestly, I have no problem zooming with you on any old weekend morning or weekday morning.
It's just excuses. That's what your podcast is. It's excuses for, it's like I think of a podcast like having a dog. You know, you take the dog to the supermarket and it's like, I have a podcast, talk to me. And it's like, it's an excuse for it to talk to nice people.
Oh yeah, this is definitely like my COVID cure for loneliness that has just evolved into something else. So we are going to continue the conversation from our previous episode, which was about historical tourism in games and kind of erasing historical realities in the name of comfort and an enjoyable, palatable experience for people who just want to have a good time. You know, stay out of my board games. Country fresh.
Right.
But now we're going to get into the stinky stuff and under what circumstances you can and should have it in your board games. Would you say that's about right?
Yeah, I mean, so you can emerge from a conversation like we had last time, episode 61 of Beyond Solitaire, on historical tourist games. It's like, okay, they're trying to ruin my fun, right? And they're trying to, I just want to play Puerto Rico in peace. I just want to play Age of Colonization in peace. I just want to play Endeavor Age of Sail and Maracaibo, all these games that we like kind of in the crosshairs. I just want to have fun. And like, I wanted to make another episode to kind of specify that I am not against fun, people. And I like fun. And as a matter of fact, I really push it when it comes to like what I think a game could do. And we'll talk about that. And I call it healthy misbehavior. And I'm going to speak about that as an educator. I'm going to speak about that as a psychotherapist. As a psychotherapist, I like when people have fun and they sometimes need that unsafe space, that safe space to be unsafe and to be, jerks and everything. And I'll specify all that and distinguish it from the whole, cultural stuff. Cause I think that those are two different things. So I wanted to have a conversation that specified that distinction.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, even thinking about healthy, I'm a teacher. I have to work with my students in those registers too. There's things that are outright disrespect that I have to like discipline in the classroom, but there are also things where you build in, like even within a student-teacher relationship, right? Like I play a game called Stulta with my students. Stulta means stupid in Latin. So I will deliberately misread something that we're all reading together. And if they catch my mistake, they yell Stulta at me and tell me that I'm an idiot. Which they of course love to do, partially because they're telling the truth. And then partially because
it's misbehavior. It's contained misbehavior. Yeah,
it's contained misbehavior. And I think that this can go a really long way into board games and still be 100% healthy.
Absolutely.
And good.
All right.
Yes.
But you have a sponsor.
Oh, yes, I do. So I will mention my sponsor. It's always good to have an ad break. So I am being sponsored this season on the Beyond Solitaire podcast by Central Michigan University's Center for Learning Through Games and Simulations. And basically it's an awesome new development at CMU. So if you are younger and you're looking for a place to go to school and you want to play games for credit, then I can't tell you not to go for that. They have a games press, so they're going to be bringing some academic games to Kickstarter over the course of the next couple of years, and I'm really excited about. And there are a few other surprise announcements that I can't talk about yet, but let's just say that CMU is up to some good stuff this year.
I'm a big fan of taking games more seriously than just games, so it sounds like CMU is doing just that.
Yes, honestly, what they're doing is right up my alley, so I have no issue just plugging it.
Yeah, very cool.
But back to gross stuff. So no, so you so you also like to get aggressive in games. So what do you have any experiences like that you would maybe want to talk about as an exemplar in your own gaming life of what we're talking about?
Okay, so I'm talking about healthy misbehavior, right? And to be clear, like you could see my wall, I have a lot of cooperative games. I'm a massive teddy bear. I like, and also like kind of low interaction Euros and just building stuff and being pastoral. And to me, I am a massive teddy bear, and I have to like really specify this stuff. There's I don't want to distinguish, good for me and therefore good for thee, or like not good for thee. I don't want to make that distinction. So it's like, okay, everybody has to play what I play. There's a lot of people out there that play things that I would never play ever. And we're free. I think Liz coming from a journalistic tradition, and me, you know, coming at it from a humanist tradition as a psychotherapist, like we want people to be able to misbehave all they want in games within like a circumscribed limit, and that limit is pretty broad for us. So when I talk about healthy misbehavior, let's talk about, this is beyond solitaire, so we're going to talk about war games. What about war games? You know, it's like if I'm having a problem with all these colonization games, well, then I always get that response. What about war games? I want war. Is it bad to play Nazi? I'm playing like brutality. I'm doing this, and this. And yeah, the voice.
And you always hear them just like that. Yeah, that's the voice that comes from the air.
So then a war game, let's just take that as a very starting example. A war game to me is good war games, not any old war game. You have to be well crafted, and you have to be historically accurate, and whatever a war game ethos is. To me, that represents a case of healthy misbehavior. As a matter of fact, I just learned this. Tanya Popeda put up a blog talking about H.G. Wells. Yes. And that whole idea, like, so H.G. Wells published a book, I think this was in the early 20th century, where he talks about war games as almost like a replacement for actual war, you know? So like people who want to get that instinct out, who just love war. It's like, okay, don't make war with real people. Don't use real bodies. Don't use real resources. Like, play this game and get that instinct out in the game, which is safe for people. So that's why a lot of the earliest games are war games. Like, you know, I think Blitzkrieg was a war game from Germany in the 19th century, with minis and all the kind of Kriegspiel.
Yes, Kriegspiel. Yes.
You know, and chess and checkers are all martial games. Yes. And the instinct to play war in a game is old as heck. And as much as you can kind of focus on, like, okay, well, you're representing brutality, and you're trivializing what people go through on the field in the game space, right? I'm not in the real world now. I'm in the game space. You know, I am kind of recreating, or like, you know, just like we call it sublimation, right? In psychotherapy, we're sublimating these urges to fight, these urges to be violent. You know, and in a way, civilization is a project of sublimating urges. Like, okay, give them circus, give them lions in the Colosseum, give them today MMA, and give them all these things, and give them war games, give them conflict. You know, and then we're sophisticated in our historical knowledge. We like to put ourselves not just like abstract combat, but like in the field of battle. That's healthy behavior.
Yeah. And I would argue that it is, because so while I was writing my dissertation, I was spending my off hours playing Skyrim. I've played a lot of Skyrim, and I love it when like they go to the slow frame where you like do a really good kill. I've 100% like just murdered everyone. I got all the Daedric artifacts, which requires cannibalism, human sacrifice, and like other horrible betrayals in order to get them all. But this was in a game. I've actually felt still a little bit guilty about some of the stuff that I was doing, because I'm actually a bit of a softball myself. But I really enjoyed the experience of being a little bit bad. Like, I love the Thieves Guild. I love sneaking to people's houses and stealing stuff. Like, would I ever do that in real life? God, no. But it felt great to do it in Skyrim.
And we love it. We love do your thing, right?
Yeah. And I think in a war scenario, you know, if you're playing as a general, I mean, I'm listening to an audiobook about Napoleon right now, and like there'll be battles where thousands upon thousands of people die, but the excitement of strategically winning is clearly kind of winning out a lot of the time for those people who are like in high command. I think that's how you feel when you're in that situation. And I also think that it's definitely okay in a game to be like, yes, I made a strategic sacrifice and I was victorious, because you're not actually hurting anyone.
Right.
And, I feel completely comfortable with that personally.
Right. And
as a way to have fun.
And there's a bunch of layers to that, right? So like, okay, there's a consent that happens. So it's like, and that we'll talk about consent more in just a second, but in terms of just like establishing that safe space to misbehave. Now, everybody at the table who is participating is giving their consent to be like, you know what, I'm going to misbehave right now. Everything that I do is not something. It's not something I want to happen in real life. But I have these urges, and I work hard, and I did relieve stress. And there's nothing that relieves stress like beheading an orc or beheading a gnoll, whatever it is. I thought about it because like the whole Frosthaven deal. Right. Remember, this was like a couple of months ago where Isaac put up the blog, and I'm gonna make Frosthaven safe for people, and I want Board to be a safe space. So much of that, taking out the cultural stuff for now, but like so much of that was like I think a lot of people were like, well, wait a minute, I can't misbehave in my game anymore. Wait a minute, I want to be a dirty mercenary, because in Frosthaven you're playing like these, it's very like kind of gritty mercenary, making terrible choices, killing Enoch's babies, and making the choice to be just go for money and be a dirtbag. And I think a lot of people interpreted what Isaac was doing as like, okay, I can't do that anymore because other people be offended, and that's not what was happening. And I'll explain what's happening in a second. But you could still be a jerk. Isaac realizes that that's where his bread is buttered, in helping gamers feel like jerks, really smart gamers who turn a lot of gears, but like those gears are turning towards being the maximum jerk to kill as many people as possible. He wants that, and we want that too. We want, I want you to, in Skyrim, to, revel in your kill. And there's also, I should probably mention this at this point, because this is we're two Americans. And so like we focus on like very, very permissible, violent aspects. And then like we're very prude about sex and everything. I think both of us are in agreement, because we had this conversation before, that like within consent, you can also push sexual boundaries too.
I think so. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't mind a nude or two in a game. I don't mind like a sex scene. I don't mind whatever it is. It's just, there's a permission boundary there.
Yeah.
But within that permissible boundary, if that is healthy misbehavior in a game, I remember like I played God of War, the video game, and you'd run into like a harem every once in a while, and there'd be naked women all over the place. And you could do stuff with the naked women.
Yeah. Or like, Dragon's Age.
Right.
I like all the little romance plots, especially when you develop the romance stuff to get to the sexy parts.
The BioWare thing. Mm-hmm, yeah, Mass Effect as well. You get all the women, or if you're a female shepherd, all the men, or if you're a female shepherd, all the women. It's very, and you could be paying if you really want to. That's all like within. Again, I'm saying that over and over again, within permission structure, that can be healthy misbehavior. So and
I think though that one of the lines that we run into. So I think one of the favorite examples to point to for where this is a problem is something like Cards Against Humanity, where everybody is in the circle, right? And it's like, I can be as horrible as I want. It's even called a party game for horrible people. I will say it's out of vogue to say this now, right? I have played Cards Against Humanity and had a great time. I did it with people I trusted. Also, as a group, we did remove cards that we just didn't think were funny.
Right. Sure.
So, I mean, it's one of those things, right, where it's about consent, and that consent definitely, I think the reason that people get upset when we talk about these issues is they're remembering times where they felt like they were agreeing to one thing, but then once they had entered that gaming circle, it turned into something else, something that was unexpected and something that got ugly. And I think that learning how to maintain that space correctly is key to having a good time. And I actually do think that segues into what you're going to be talking about, because it's okay to be horrible, but it's not okay to be horrible in a way that feels so personal that it's not going to stay in the circle. And so, it's also possibly horrible in a way that says something about how you view the world that is objectively freaking uncomfortable.
Right. I actually do want to, I'm going to put a pin on that. I definitely want to get back to that, because there's a level of horribleness that people bring up all the time. And I think we need to kind of talk about that. And that's Nazis.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that is one of the big thing. Well, whenever someone talks about what about war games, it usually goes to what about Nazis. So with Nazis, when someone brings up a Nazi, it's code for this is the worst misbehavior ever. Like we've kind of decided that in our culture that like, okay, there's nothing worse than a Nazi. Right. And then, so is it okay to play a Nazi in a game? I'm playing, Puerto Rico, Maracaibo, all these cultural things, or I'm playing like Cards Against Humanity, and I'm kind of like crossing boundaries and stuff. So then why is that all okay? But then like, or like, what about Nazis, basically?
Right.
And I think even that falls in the circle. like, even that falls in circle. Like, okay, if you're playing, Axis and Allies, or you're playing, some war game or some like zoomed in war game, you're playing like, a battle between, the Nazi forces and Allied forces, then, does that, if you're playing a Nazi, does that like mean I justify the Holocaust? Does that mean I think that the Holocaust is okay? You're playing, you're playing that particular, like you're immersed in that particular battle. Right? Not every that battle happened.
Yeah.
And so not every, like if you're playing that, that's not like permission to say the Holocaust was okay or whatever it is. It's just like, okay, this happened, and it is part of the historical drama, right? And it's very important that we know the historical drama. We have been asked as a culture by many, many Jews to never forget.
Yes.
So like we like it or not, we need our cultural media, books, TV, whatever, to faithfully and historically represent what happened, so that we don't forget, we don't do it again. And so in the gaming space, maybe, because it's different because we're doing the thing. So it's like, okay, there's another level of it. But still, to me, it's like that's more learning that can go in there. Obviously, you want that consent. Obviously, you don't want just broadcast to the masses, like, uncritically. If someone's uncomfortable with it, to let them check out.
Mm-hmm.
Don't advertise it. There's many games that I don't include on my shelf because I like them, or I get something out of them, but like I know that other people don't. So it's like you have to be super careful with a hand and with gloves, but it's okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Play a Nazi in a game for that. It's almost like the ultimate healthy misbehavior.
Right.
Because it does do stuff.
I also think that it's okay. So it's okay not to want to too. So like David Thompson does not like to play Nazis and will make other people play test the other side of Undaunted, for example. And I also think that that's okay. But yeah, I mean, if you are being historically accurate, you're reenacting history, you're using this as a historical experience, and you are comfortable with it, I don't really see, and the other person you're playing with is comfortable with it, which hopefully that's obvious because they entered the game with you, but make sure.
Be very explicit. Be very clear.
I think it's okay to play it. And I also think it's okay to enjoy, because like typically, this is not like train, right? Where you realize what the train is for, and that's going to a concentration camp. This is a battle that you're playing out, and you're trying to be strategic and see who won. And so if you think that that is still too gross for you, that's okay. But I also think that I think that is ethically on the good side of the line. You're fine. I do get a little bit freaked out if people are a little too into it, if that makes sense. Like, what feelings are you having while you play this? Like, are you basically having an onanistic experience while this other person's at the table because you're so excited to play a Nazi? Then I'm going to worry about you.
Go ahead and look up onanistic, people. Speaking of misbehavior.
But, if you're just having fun because you're in the game and you're like doing war together, that's, I mean, I don't really see the problem with that.
Yeah. I mean, so speaking of that, like getting a little bit too into it. So like, if we can't tolerate playing a Nazi in a game, then the only people who will play Nazis in games are the people that are too into it. Like they're the Nazis. Like, the only people who will play Nazi games is Nazis if we shirk from that.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not comfortable with that. Like, I mean, we need to find ways to have, we use this word play, but not all play has to be fun. Not all play has to be frivolous. I'm not talking about frivolous play. I'm talking about like just, entering into spaces and using your imagination and reacting stuff that play at a higher level. Like, I think there's room for that. That's healthy. All that is healthy.
So what is unhealthy though? Because we even in this conversation, right, there's like little places at the edge where I certainly start to feel uncomfortable. I'm sure you have your own little edges too. And part of it's personal comfort, but I also think that discomfort is also a response to something that's a little bit real. Right.
Okay. So we're talking a lot about consent, right? And this is going to be always the frame for this conversation. So I really apologize for you were pushing me beyond where I needed to go. I didn't have your consent list, but you have my. I'm going to consent now. So go ahead and recreate that Cards Against Humanity example, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah. Well, okay. It's been a really long time since I played Cards Against Humanity.
The one you just said, the one you just said in terms of like, okay, this scenario where it goes too far. What was that again?
Well, I mean, those are more theoretical for me because we took all the cards out. But like, if somebody was like playing a Trail of Tears card and laughing at it, I would personally feel gross about that.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't like, ooh, a big black dick. Like, I don't think that that's funny. Fiery poops is funny. But
okay.
Like when somebody's like, I'm just gonna play, a large penis that belongs to somebody from a race that's not even my race. And like I'm gonna throw that down and have a big laugh about it. Like, why is that funny?
Right. Okay. So thank you very much for clarifying, because it goes right into what I'm talking about. So then what we're talking about in terms of all these healthy little misbehaviors are like, recreated individual instances, like one gladiator match, one, raid of an orc village or raid of a human village or whatever it is. And, I'm not going to defend that and say, oh, that's beautiful behavior, but like, it's at least healthy misbehavior. It crosses a line for me. And it's what I'm hearing is a cross line for Liz too. When it crosses from like just individual bits of misbehavior to levels of cultural oppression.
Yeah.
So there is a level of culture, which I'm the culture guy. So then I can talk your head off, and I'm about to, where cultural misbehaviors are unhealthy. I talk about it in terms of, a year of good trouble. I've been synthesizing it and trying to kind of come up with pithier, shorter ways of expressing what I'm talking about. And I think I've boiled it down to one acronym: CASE. CASE. And if you want to do it, go ahead. Liz, put up the letters on the Zoom or whatever it is.
I'll do it.
In the edit.
Today's letters of the day, kids, are CASE.
So cultural appropriation, stereotyping, and erasure. So then when you talk about the big black dick, that's a stereotype. That why is that bad to talk about? Not only because of the individual thing, but it is a stereotype. And that stereotype can be linked directly to cultural ideas that have produced harm. What are, so many of the, the Tulsa massacre and, the so many things that have like, outbursts against Black folk. So many of them have started with a white woman claim that they were attacked by a Black man. Yep. And so when we're talking about big black, I'm not going to say the D word because I don't want to do too many bleeps. A big black penis. Then
we're bleeping this.
I might have to beep it on the One Stop Co-op Shop.
Yeah, you might.
Shelf stories, no way. So then, if we're talking about big black penises, we're touching that stereotype that has had real world harm. So culture stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And in a way, we have to kind of assume that games are cultural products. Like if you assume games are just games, you're not going to track this conversation at all.
Yeah.
But if you assume games are cultural product that just kind of like replicate stuff that happens in the culture, well, cultural oppression is a thing. Appropriation, stereotyping, and erasure are all things that were true then, 400 years ago, 600, however long, they're true today. And we live with it as marginalized, people from marginalized community. You're a woman, I'm Puerto Rican, and all the people that we live with that oppression every day.
Yes,
we're reminded. Liz Davidson, whole episode on misogyny, talking about what she struggles with. So it's like when those stereotypes just are there in the game. So like histrionic fit, as a card against humanity thing. Yeah. And it's like, we could talk about like, okay, you were having a bad day, but when it comes to like, a stereotyped woman thing, this is why women can't be president. This is why women are XYZ. That's that stuff. That's the stuff that cuts. Because there's because we live with this stuff every day. There's no boundary between when there's no boundary between the real life and the game. When that cultural stuff intrudes in our game, cultural appropriation, stereotyping, and erasure, when that stuff comes into our gaming life, problem.
I agree. Right. And you know what's really funny is, words like histrionic, I used to just use those and not think about it, or like hysterics, because I didn't know the etymological meaning of that.
Right.
But actually,
men don't get histrionic.
No.
We're not coded as we get histrionic, but we're not coded as that.
Yeah. A hystera, for those of you who want to learn some Greek today, is a womb. So if you have weird ideas about uteruses, That's what those words indicate.
Right.
But
so there is a difference, people, and I'm talking directly to a certain kind of person. Do what about word games, people? There is a difference between like just these bits of misbehavior and oppression.
Yes.
Oppression is like, so we talk about like war being brutality. You're celebrating brutality in the game. Like oppression is brutality that is systemic and is applied to a certain group of people throughout a very, very long historical time period. Women, we talk about, women being oppressed, we talk about POC being oppressed. Oppression is not just a bad day. Oppression is not just inconvenience. Oppression is not one-time thing. Oppression happens over and over and over and over. And it's applied physically, it's applied emotionally, it's applied psychologically, and it's applied culturally. Culturally is where the gaming piece ends in. And so that game experience, when it has not just like the brutality or the misbehavior, when it has the oppression, then all it's doing is reinstantiating oppression that we live with. I don't want that. I do not consent to that. No, thank you.
Like, well, when you say, I just want to have a good time, keep your politics out of my games, I would say that that's actually where that's a statement that's legitimate. If that makes sense. Like keep.
Right. So like, like you see the people, no politics. Well, guess what? When I call out an episode of Case, cultural appropriation, stereotyping, and erasure, when I call that out, I'm saying no politics in the game.
Yeah.
Because I'm saying no political oppression in the game. Like do something else so that I don't have to experience Keys in my gaming experience. And if a person is there and they're not experiencing it, then it's not like, oh well, this is the way I am, therefore whatever, or taking it as an attack. It's like, okay, well, you're ruining my fun.
Yeah.
Well, my fun is already ruined, people.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like that conversation that families have, right? Where like somebody is the aggressive one in the family and the other one is asked to keep the peace. Like the peace is already broken,
right? Because
the other person was behaving bad. Or like, I don't know, it makes me think of, so this is an off-topic thing, but I always think about it. There's a great Martin Luther insult generator online where he can insult you. But my favorites.
he was kind of very scrabbly, very like he had a lot of ulcers and he was just a very crabby guy.
No, I feel like he was probably really fun to have a beer with, but he was really mean. So one of my favorite insults of his is, you were like a mouse dropping in the pepper. And I sort of feel like having a case incident in your game life is like having a mouse dropping in the pepper. You're having a spicy good time. You're ready to eat this food with your friends. Oh, there's poop in it.
Yeah. And okay, you like and for whatever reason that people who are in the hobby have cultured it's the taste of turd, and they're like, "Ooh, this is some spicy turd," and so like perfect example. I love that you brought up the Card Against Humanity like card Trail of Tears, right?
Yeah,
it's total case, like it's the like maximized version of case, but like it's appropriation, like they literally stole the land. Right. It's an appropriation being stealing. Right. So it's like you can steal cultural ideas, but in that particular case, they stole the land. So stereotyping, they had to, in order to make it palatable, they had to, the merciless Indian savage, like they don't deserve the land. Right. They're just savages, not going to do anything with it. They don't, they're there and they're like this lower form of life. They're not even Christian, don't even worship God. They don't worship property. Yeah. So like, all the stereotypes, right, were used to justify that thing. And then a literal erasure, right? Literal removal, right? And then what we call genocide. So like, so that's a case of something really, really crappy that happened in the war. So like, why am I like, and the oppression is that it's still ongoing. Like you ask any, First Nations person or Native American person, however they self-identify, like they're still there. Like, and I work with them, and this is one of the things I'm working more and more with. They're still there, and they're still dealing with the effects of this stuff today. So it's like, well, the war's pretty bad. Why am I celebrating war? It's like, okay, war, at the very least, war is between two agents.
Yes. Both sides are fighting for it to be a war,
right? And it's like, okay, if I play a game, then I can imagine different scenarios. Like, okay, maybe this person wins, maybe like there's at least fight back, right? Yeah. If a Card Against Humanity card is being played, then the people can't fight back, and I can't fight back as a gamer, The only thing I could do is check out if that's the thing that's going to be there. Like I don't have agency when that card is played, and the owner is like, well, do you have a problem with the card? No agency. So like there's agency on two levels. There's one of those agency being permission in the game, and then the actors within the game, do they have agency to fight back with aggression?
Yeah.
And in a Euro game, a lot of times the workers don't fight back.
No, they don't. They're just they're very pliant. Those fine little Euro workers.
They come on down and they work the fields, and they're so happy. Here's my corn. I don't have to get paid, and I don't have to. There's no upkeep or anything like that. And that to me is a erasure.
Yeah. And
these erasures happen in real life all the time, and I don't want that in my game. So then, if even like a Euro game could do so much to be like, what, I have to pay the workers. If I don't pay the workers, they leave.
Yeah.
That's like, that would be enough. Like, even if you're putting me in a terrible situation of like thinking about it and whatever it is, at the very least, if you give the worker that little bit of agency, if you don't erase it, if you actually present that basic aspect of being a worker, they have a little bit of agency in like what they can do on the board, then I'm on the road to being okay with it.
That actually has me thinking, okay, what heroes do have that? I mean, I guess in Agricola, if you don't feed your family, you starve, and all the family is the workers.
Yeah. I mean, something like that. And that's annoying. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking about like, I've been prepping Rococo, right? I mean, at least in that you have to pay up for a new employee. So you don't pay them every round, but they are a cost. I'm just trying to think of like, I can't think of very many. I mean, Agricola is really unique to me in a way, in the sense that you have to be able to actually feed people at the end of each turn, and you have to budget for that. And I'm sure there are more.
I mean, the complaint in Agricola is that's annoying, and that's not fun, and oh my God, I have to do the workers. It's so funny because in the last episode we talked about boss fantasies. So then, like, what's the ultimate boss fantasy? It's like, I don't have to pay my workers. They have.
Yeah, they just show up and they're good, and they don't
have agency. I erase all their humanity, and I just like get the value creation from them.
Yeah, they don't have any cigarette breaks. They don't go to the bathroom.
Right.
No pooping on company time.
Right. And I pay them nothing, and they're fine. And so it's like, in gaming, we've educated ourselves. I know we're kind of like down a little bit of a road here, but workers, man, I'm a big worker guy. So then in these Euro games, we've educated ourselves to replicate this kind of form of economic oppression.
Yeah.
Of not paying workers. We even get to the point of, because I brought this up in forums, I'll get people defending. It's like, okay, if you pay the workers, that's too complicated. If you pay the workers, the Agricola thing happens where it's like, okay, what's left over for me? It's like a Scrabble for resources. And it's like, really? That's the construction that we've made in our games? That's how much we are like, the gaming culture is lined up against a certain type of oppressed people, which is workers?
Yeah.
It's not only cultural, but I'm also a worker person too.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of stereotyping and erasure that happens in that particular case, particularly erasure in that particular case. So
yeah, but I think you're right. The thing that makes brutality in war more interesting is that you can fire on me and on my soldiers, but I also get to retaliate next turn. And it's about the two-sidedness that even if something's unfair, like look at David Thompson's Value Defense series. It's entirely about unfair fights. We kind of like those, actually. It's not about equality of the sides in terms of resources or, tools to fight with. It's about letting somebody try to use their cleverness and the resources they do have to get somewhere. It's about giving them agency. And of course, it's a game, so everybody has to have a chance of winning.
Right. And games have to simplify. Games have to gloss, and games have to, so you're going to erase a lot. And so there's always going to be, like, oh, why did you put this in? Why didn't you put that in? Tristan Hall put up Call Killforth recently, the third Killforth game. And there was a thread that said, okay, where are everybody's white here. Where are the black people? Where are the brownskin people? All this kind of stuff. And I'm actually okay with that. Because Tristan isn't telling a big he's not pretending to tell big multicultural stories. He's telling a classic Lord of the Rings fantasy. Do your thing, white people fantasy. It's fine. I'm actually fine with that. Where I'm not fine in terms of the case is when the erasure happens to people that should be there. And that's where historical games come in, like, and struggle, like the struggle should be there because the struggle is almost always there. No one likes to be oppressed. No one likes to, whatever. And even if they lose a fight and they become enslaved after the fact, the story's not over. It's not like, okay, oh, you won, now you can enslave me for 100 years.
Yeah, that's not actually how that works.
It's not how it works. There's always rebellion. There's always struggle. There's always resistance, whether it's running away or whatever it is. And that's the erasure I'm talking about. That's really the erasure I'm talking about, because that happens, like that cuts across culture and labor and whatever it is. When I have a game that erases struggle in particular, oh man, that and it's a historical game, it's evoking a historical time period, or it's like a fantasy, like because there's a big thing about like orcs, right? So orcs are kind of they're racially whatever, racially aggressive, racially this, racially that. Well, that when you talk about something that is racially something, now we're talking stereotype. Now we're bringing the S of the case. And now that's where, so it's like, oh, why can't I just hack orcs part in D&D? Because orcs are this race of people that are inherently biologically aggressive. That's a stereotype that is from real world of certain, especially Black race. Yeah.
Well, I guess my question about that is, why do you prefer to hack orcs instead of other humans?
Right.
Why is that a preference that you have?
Can I hack some orcs and then I'm friends with these other orcs?
Right.
So I don't mind hacking orcs.
Where are the orc wizards and scientists? And
where's the smartest orc that ever orked? Where is the orc that is like 20 intelligence and can rival Elminster and Gandalf and all these other people? I'll take that. Well, that doesn't sound right. Whatever it is, like, well,
why doesn't it sound right?
To go back to the thing, like I don't, so this is where the Isaac thing came in. Yeah. So it's like, people thought, okay, I'm taking away the hack and slash. No, I'm not taking away the hack and slash. Yeah. I'm just taking away the hack and slash based on racial categories, like immutable biological racial categories. Hack and slash all you want. Mm-hmm. Hack it. If this Enoch's culture is like, rotted to the core, then go have at it. But they're rotted to the core because of their culture, not because of their skin.
Yes, actually, back to Skyrim, since that's like my most played, like so many hours. I used to get frustrated when making new characters because there are certain race-based bonuses and also deficits depending on what you choose. So you really can't just choose to be anybody with any sort of profession if you want to play an optimal game.
Right.
And I always found that limiting. And it's also just a bunch of BS, like put in our current cultural context in our lives. It's like, wait, why are we still even doing that, even with fantasy? Anybody? And
yet with the human, you could be anything you want.
Yeah.
And
humans
the basic human is neutral. And the basic human is always a white guy.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's just as true in our culture still. Like if you think, oh, like what is a human? Most images will just be a white guy. There's two genders, male and political.
Two skin colors, white and political. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that instead of just getting mad, right, when you think about these things, because I like to play Skyrim, I'm not going to stop booting up a new game every couple of years because I just got nostalgic and I wanted to buy a new house and rift it or something.
Sure.
I think that when these questions come up, I think the other issue we always have, right, is one of response of like, oh, you're killing the fun. Oh, you're just a killjoy. You're why would anybody, you must be so fun at parties. Yes, I am actually, but
I just want to be myself and I just want to do whatever. And I work hard and I want,
right. But like, shouldn't you be asking yourself questions about why you're so attached to those specific things? I mean, you can be yourself and wreck enemies without also having to racially stereotype. You can be yourself and wreck enemies without needing to colonize anything. So
and erase the struggle of the colonized people. To be clear, I don't have a problem with colonization. It's happened. It happened. And my problem is in these colonization games, the tendency has been to make the worker, to erase the worker agency.
Yeah.
That's been that's the and as we said in the last video, lie about it.
Right.
So like, colonist and servant and all kind of, like you're erasing the struggle and you're erasing the humanity of these things. So like when we talk about case, the erasure part is really important. All three are important. The A, the S, and the E are all important. I will release another video kind of go in detail, but like I hope that gives people a acronym to help understand, okay, when we have a problem, the problem is not in the individual actions. Healthy misbehavior is a good thing. It's the appropriation, stereotyping, and erasure. When something you're doing is playing on those three things that are tools of cultural oppression that happen all the time in real life, then that's where we have the problem.
Yes. Sure. Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to leave this in the episode, but I do want to draw one line about that, which is that, okay, I have been working on my openness to games with art I don't necessarily like, just in the name of trying to access good gameplay. So I ordered Madara because Kevin Erskine had so many good things to say about it. I'm not delighted with like the sexy anime art. It's really not my thing.
Brutal.
But I'm going to give it a try because I want to experience the game. That said, we talk about healthy misbehavior. There are some things that are just never going to be healthy. And so there's the cultural aspect of that. I think that, genocide is fun. No, it's not. That's never fun. But also, I will never be okay with things like sexual assault in games. I'm okay with the sex scene in games. I'm okay with sexiness in games. But there are some things that I just will not ever be cool with. And that's one of them. So, we talk about healthy misbehavior. What are the limits in your opinion?
Okay, we can keep this in if you want.
Yeah, like where do we go? Where, is there such a thing as a misbehavior that's just truly unhealthy? I would say yes.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, how do you delineate that? You know what I mean?
Well, okay. Well, what's the point though? I mean, we're talking about criticizing something or canceling something. So like when we talk about like, okay, what is allowable, what's not, that conflation gets there just drummed in all the time. It's like, if I disapprove of something, then I want to cancel it. And it's not the case. So it's like, I want the freedom. So like Madara is a good example. Madara has just a very sexualized characters, especially the women. Classic TNA poses and, scantily clad, plays into the whole trope. It's a JRPG because JRPGs kind of play into those tropes. So then I want to be able to criticize it. I want to be able to say, okay, look what can we go a different direction, please? Blah, 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 blah. Without saying, okay, this game is bad and shouldn't exist and all this kind of thing. Like make Madara. The problem is that we live in a gaming culture right now that like regards that as normal. It regards that as the way to, if I'm going to launch a Kickstarter, it's going to be successful, then I need to put the titties. Especially when it comes to women, like fantasy women in games, like I need that to draw in. And so like what we're trying to, like my project anyway, is I don't want to cancel those games, but I do want to criticize those games. And I want to clear space for other dungeon crawl designers to make an alternative and to really hype that up and be like, what, that's over there and they're doing their thing. I don't approve of that. And I think that has bad effects, but whatever, let's try to clear space so that this other game with, clothed women or with, equitable nudity. Or whatever it is, like, the funny pictures of like, the men making the TNA poses. And like maybe make room for that game too. Right now you have the hobby looks the way it is. It's very dominated by just like white guys who like to have a lot of fun, and there's this immediate shutdown of like, no, I don't like that. I was like, well, I mean, there should be room for all this stuff. That we should make gaming open to all sorts of human experiences, and to me the best one will win out. That's like the whole point of free speech. You have the right to be wrong. And then we figure it out until we come up with something that everybody can kind of go along with. So when it comes to Madara, I'll criticize the heck out of it. I don't want to cancel it. My solution to that is more games that undo, that question, that approach things differently than Madara does.
Yeah. I mean, I'm about to play it. I'm hoping I'll enjoy it very much. I just know already that I'm not going to have a great aesthetic experience. I'd probably look at an ugly paper map, to be honest.
And it's a perfect example case. That's the total stereotyping of women.
Yeah.
Sexualized stereotype of women all over the place, and that plays into the oppression of women as sex object, women as like, kind of willing to do whatever. And if people have a hard time grokking that, well, how do you relate Madara? I get the voice again. How do you relate, schoolgirls to sexual assault in the workplace? You're putting that in there. It's like, well, it all comes from the same cultural tree.
Yeah.
It all comes from the same stereotype that women exist to be looked at by men.
Yeah. No, that's true. But I like what you had to say too about kind of just allowing, I think that what we're asking for too, when we talk about inclusion in the hobby and we talk about, wanting more voices in the hobby, is that, I think you're right. Like the view that is the best will ultimately win out. It's okay to have a whole bunch of viewpoints, but things that are the most widely appealing will do well. I mean, we live in a capitalist society, right? But in some ways, trying to fight that, to complain about it, to not hear the criticism, it's almost like trying to artificially cap the market. Like we're the market too. And,
right.
If you want a bunch of free trade of game ideas, you got to let it in.
I can't stand that people think that free market means just like no voices. The money is speech, and it's complete garbage. Like, no, speech is speech. Speech is still speech. And if I can, with my words and your words and everything, we put this content out and we can sway some minds to be like, you know what? Okay, Madara or whatever other game that engages in some kind of stereotyping or some kind of erasure or appropriation or whatever. Like, if we speak out against these games, that enough people will be like, you know what? We don't need that. I can have fun other ways.
Yeah.
Like the Madara will not be any less cool if it has badass women. That might even be a cooler version of the game. And I want to be able to make that persuasive case. I don't want to have to result to that kind of the cancellation route. I want to be able to persuade people like, hey, look, let's try this. You will have the same good time and you won't be replicating a stereotype that in other areas causes real world harm.
That, and like, even if, things with the sexy art that's not really my thing still continue to exist, what I really want is options where I don't have to deal with it as the price of entry.
That too.
If that's the price if that's something that you want in your games, like in your home, I mean, okay, this is your business. But
you're king, baby.
But I want that gameplay without having to pay the price of needing eye bleach afterwards.
Right.
And it's an ongoing process, but I do think that trying to think through it is the best way forward.
Sure.
Which is, of course, why we're on here talking about case.
That's right. So there we go. Healthy misbehavior is the individual little bad things that we do. We didn't even mention true crime. We didn't even mention like playing Jack the Ripper and playing all that. Like, fine. I will not play Jack the Ripper, and I think that's, but millions of people do true crime, whatever it is. Right.
Yeah, I love true crime. Like, I'm a typical whiteley. I like to go to Starbucks on the way to work, and I listen to my little true crime podcast about murders and all those TikToks about what your wife's really home doing on a Friday night. Her arms were cut off, her legs were cut off. I'm like listening.
Unbelievable.
But do I really want it? No. Is it part of my healthy recreation? I would say yes. And
human mind is weird. It's fine. We have the urges and whatever. Do it in the safe space. When it comes to oppression knows no boundaries. Oppression is systemic. Oppression is culture wide. It invades all our cultural space, and it invades our games too. And it's the same brutalities happen to the same people over and over again. And being reminded of those things in our games, that's where the line is crossed. And that's a weird thing for people to think about, who just think of oppression, who don't even think of oppression because they don't experience oppression.
Yeah.
So, they just think of it as like a bucket of bad. And it's like, why are you picking this one and not that one? It's like, well, there's a whole bucket of things that are whatever, but there's this particular aspect, which I'm calling case, which I'm hopeful that people remember the acronym. That that's where we're crossing the line. It's like it's representing real world stuff that happens to us, and I don't want that.
Yeah. So are you going to start a new video series called Case Studies?
Case Files.
Case Files.
Case Files. Yes. I'm going to go back to all the good trouble and be like, okay, Case Files, Jamaica. Case Files, Trudvang Legends. Case Files.
Sounds like a board game true crime podcast to me. And I think that's a good note to end it, so we can just continue giggling off air. But
absolutely.
Everyone, Jason can be found at Shelf Stories. You're still doing the podcast in the One Stop Co-op Shop.
Yep.
You're still doing Dice Tower. Jason's everywhere. Go find him. And
thank you so much. This was real, as always, it's amazing time.
Yeah, always. And find me Beyond Solitaire. Leave a comment. Hopefully leave a like, subscribe, and most of all, happy gaming.
Later, everybody.